طيب. You know how to cut it on? Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathiran. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Tonight's lecture, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we're continuing al-Jumu'atu adabun wa ahkam, the manners and the rulings of al-Jumu'ah. The manners and the rulings of al-Jumu'ah. So what we mentioned last week, or what we wanted to mention last week, was a new ruling and a new manner or piece of etiquette of al-Jumu'ah, and that is of washing, taking a bath or taking a shower or washing up and scrubbing on the day of al-Jumu'ah. And of course, like the other things that we've explained, we look at this issue from two angles. The first angle is the technical angle, the ruling. Do you have to wash up if you're going to Jumu'ah? Or is it recommended? Meaning, simplified terms, if you wash up for Jumu'ah, you get a reward. Allah will love you, Allah will be pleased with you. You get the hasana, the good deed. And inshallah ta'ala, your Jumu'ah will be valid. And hopefully your Jumu'ah will be accepted and blessed. And if you do not wash up for Jumu'ah, not working, not because you were sweating, or you were with your wife or your husband, but the washing for Jumu'ah, you will get a sin, a sayyah. Allah will be angry with you. It's a possibility that the Jumu'ah will be invalid. It's a possibility that your Jumu'ah will be stripped of its barakah. So that's the technical perspective of the ghusl. And then we have the spiritual perspective of the ghusl. Making and believing and feeling and upholding Jumu'ah as a special day. It's not a normal day. It's not just some type of traditional day, but it's a special day, the best day out of the week. And from that which I do to manifest and to show that it's special is that I make sure that I have my best appearance. I'm clean. I'm squeaky clean. I'm clean. I'm looking good. I'm smelling good. I have my best clothes on because it's a special day. It's a special day, whether it is obligatory or not obligatory. But I'm going to do it because it's a special day. All right? So the technical ruling of making the ghusl for al-Jumu'ah, wajib or sunnah. Malik, Ahmed, Abu Hanifa, Fulan, do I have to? And of course this is extremely important for the New Yorker or the Philadelphian or the Muslim who comes from Detroit or the Muslim comes from Dallas or Los Angeles or wherever you live in, Phoenix, Tucson, wherever you are in the United States, outside the United States, Toronto, London, because I drive a cab. I do construction. I have a restaurant. I'm a train conductor. I'm a surgeon. I'm a nurse. I work in an ambulance. Time is tight. Distance is wide and far. I don't have time to make a ghusl. I'm leaving work just to get there on time. Do you understand? When you don't have the ability to lay it out perfectly, but I still want to make Jumu'ah, I still have to make Jumu'ah, so do I have to make a ghusl or not? It's a benefit in knowing the rulings. And of course the Prophet ﷺ, he told us this, that whoever Allah wants good for, he gives them understanding of the religion. And that's included in that. Is that right now, the water is off. We only have a little bit of water that's stored. It's very cold outside. I know the bare minimum, the bare basics of wudu. I don't have to wash this 3 times. I don't have to wash my hands like this first. I don't have to wash this to my elbow because the water is it's just a little bit of water, or it's a little bit of time. But if you don't have that proper fiqh, you'll clearly feel the haraj, the hardship. It's only a little bit of water. We're stuck on the side of the road. It's cold outside. Do I make tayammum? Do I have to say bismillah? Do I have to wash my hands 3 times? Not my elbows, but just my hands first. Do I have to wash my face 3 times? Do I have to wash past my elbows to my biceps? You do many recommended things when the situation calls for you not to do those recommended things because you don't have the proper fiqh. You don't know the bare minimum, the least that we can do for it to be valid. And if the act of ibadah is valid, then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, that's a step closer to the act of ibadah being what? Accepted. Allah only accepts valid deeds. The deed has to be valid. And for it to be valid, there are conditions. هناك شروط, هناك أركان, هناك واجبات, هناك مستحبات. سنن. كيف إذا لم تفرق بين هذا وذاك؟ كيف تؤدي العبادة أداء صحيحا ولا فقه عندك؟ مستحيل. وإذا لم تصح عبادتك فلا يمكن أن تكون مقبولة عند الله عز وجل. أما إذا صحت العبادة وأجزأت فبإذن الله تعالى إن شاء الله هي مقبولة بإذن الله. إنما يتقبل الله من المتقين. لا ندري من يقبل الله من لا ندري، لا نعرف هذا، لكن نرجو ونؤدي العبادة أداء صحيحا كما شرع الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. والأداء عبادة على وجه صحيح سهل جدا. يمكن كل أحد أن يتعلم الأساس، سهل، لا يستغرق وقتا كثيرا، لا يستغرق يعني جهدا، لا أبدا. So worship has to be done correctly, and if the worship is done correctly, then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala it will be accepted, hopefully. If the worship is done incorrectly, if it is not established properly, then there's no way for it to be, it's not going to be accepted. Allah only accepts the ibadah that's done properly. And the way of learning, or the way of doing the ibadah properly, is learning the basics, the technicalities. Do I have to or not? Let alone the benefit of 2021 is rushing, hustle, bustle. How many Muslims drive cabs, drive Uber, drive trucks? Many. So oftentimes their time is what? It's crunched, it's tight. And you need to know how to maneuver. I don't have to do this because I don't have time. But when I do have more time, of course I'm going to do it. Whether it's wajib or not. It's a good deed to do. It's a good thing to do. But you don't have time for good things right now. I'm trying to do the bare necessity, the bare minimum of Jumu'ah right now. Because I'm on the grind, I'm working. When I have off, I don't have, that's a different story. Then I take my time. Everyone understand this? So that's the first ruling to be discussed is the shower or the bath of Jumu'ah obligatory or just recommended? What does it mean when we say something is obligatory, as we just explained? That you have to do it. If you do it, you'll get a reward. Inshallah, Allah will be pleased with you. And hopefully your worship will be valid. And if that thing is not obligatory, you can do it and you still get a reward. Everyone understand this? So the author, Sheikh Mustafa al-Adawi, he says, يستحب الغسل أيضا للجمعة وقد ذهب بعض العلماء إلى وجوبه. His view, his opinion, the author's opinion, he says, is that it's recommended to wash for Jumu'ah. Recommended. A good thing to do, preferable. And some scholars, some ulama, they hold the opinion that it is mandatory. So he mentions two views here. His view, he says yustahab, it's recommended. His view. And then he mentions the view of other ulama who say that it is mandatory. Mustadillina. And then he mentions their proofs. Once again, to say something is a must in Islam, you have to have proof. To say that you must do something in Islam, you must have solid proof. It has to be dalil. That is authentic and that is understood and used properly. There's an authentic hadith that you're not using properly. You're using something properly which isn't authentic, as most people do today. They use something which is in the Quran. It is authentic, but they're not using it properly. They don't understand it correctly. or something is right to the point. The hadith says this, but the hadith is not sahih. The hadith has to be authentic, and the usage of it has to be authentic, accurate. So he says these scholars, they say that it's mandatory to wash for Jumu'ah. And they use the following evidences. Number one, بحديث أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال غسل يوم الجمعة واجب على كل محتلم. Is the narration of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri رضي الله عنه, that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, it is mandatory upon every pubescent Muslim to wash for Jumu'ah. Every Muslim who is of age, who has reached puberty, has to wash for Jumu'ah. The hadith says, wajibun, mandatory. And of course, this hadith, as the author mentions in the footnotes, is found in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. وبحديث عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا جاء أحدكم الجمعة فليغتسل. Abdullah ibn Umar narrated that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, when one of you comes to Jumu'ah, he must wash. Fal, lamul amr, he must wash. The author mentions that this hadith is collected by Imam al-Bukhari. وبحديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال حق لله على كل مسلم أن يغتسل في كل 7 أيام يغسل رأسه وجسده. A third proof is the narration of Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه, that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, حق لله, it is one of Allah's rights, على كل مسلم, upon each and every Muslim, to wash his head and body every 7 days. Allah's right upon every Muslim is that Muslim wash his head and body every 7 days. He says this hadith is collected by Imam Muslim. وبقول عمر لعثمان رضي الله عنهما والوضوء وقد علمت أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يأمر بالغسل. And they use a statement of Umar radiallahu anhu that he said, not the Prophet, not on the authority of Umar, but Umar's statement, موقوفا عليه هو, that Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, and you've only made wudu, and indeed you know that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to command us to wash. He used to command us to wash. Okay, the author, he mentions this statement is collected by Imam al-Bukhari and collected by Imam Muslim. And obviously we know the context of that statement. Umar was giving the khutbah. The Caliph was giving the khutbah. As we've explained before, back then things were very different. It's not like today with presidents, prime ministers, and kings, sheikhs, monarchs. The leader of the Muslims led the Muslims in their worship as well. He was the one who gave the sermon on Friday. He was the one who led them on the battlefield. He was the one who led them in Hajj. The leader was actually there. So the leader, not like today, it wasn't a secular type of thing. The Khalifa, the Caliph, was someone who was an alim as well. He was learned. He had knowledge. It wasn't just a speaker and I'm the political leader. It wasn't like that. He was the one who gave the khutbah at the main mosque. So he was giving the khutbah, and one of the companions walked in. And this companion who walked in was from the Muhajirin. He's from the early Muslims. He was one of the old school Sahaba, meaning he had a tremendous virtue. Right? He was around for what? A long time. Great companion. And he asked him, why are you coming late? So on and so forth, etc., etc., etc. And he mentioned that he had left his family's house, he had made wudu, etc. And Umar said to him, you only made wudu? That's all you did? And indeed you know, just like I know because we've been around, that the Prophet ﷺ used to command us to make ghusl for Jumu'ah, not just suffice ourselves with wudu. That's what Umar radiallahu anhu said to Uthman radiallahu anhu. Tayyib. So here we have 3 hadiths here that these scholars they use. All 3 of those hadiths are authentic, Bukhari and Muslim, and all 3 of those hadith are sarihatul dilala. Those hadiths are what? Right to the point. Haqq, wajib, fal, wajh dilala. Okay, fal, wajibun, haqqun. All of those wordings min alfaz al-wujub. They're in usul al-fiqh. When we study usul al-fiqh, These are those which are called alfaz al-wudu or sigh al-wujub. Al-asliyah wal-far'iyah. كتب الله عليكم كتب عليكم فرض واجب إن الله لا يحب إن الله يبغض. Anything which Allah hates, Allah has ordered, Allah has written, Allah has ordained, that proves that thing is haram or mandatory. There are different styles that are used that the ulama take from the text to prove and come up with the legal ruling. And of course, this discussion is found where? In usulul fiqh, which every student of knowledge is supposed to learn and study, and every layman Muslim is also supposed to have a little bit of that, a taste of what usul al-fiqh is. Where do we get this ruling from? How do we understand the Quran and Hadith, right? The more the general Muslims know about the basics of the Hadiths and the basics of fiqh, the less ignorance there'll be. The less ignorance there'll be. Because everybody is basically armed. Like money. Everybody's not a banker. Only a few brothers in the masjid may be bankers. Okay, people who specialize in economics and finance. But everybody is supposed to know the ABCs of money. The basics of credit. The basics of earning and saving. The basics of how finances work. And therefore, there's less unemployment. Money is saved. Money is more circulated in the community. Right? There's less begging and need because everyone has the basics of what they're supposed to do. Self-defense. Everybody's not a tough guy. Everybody's not a fighter, a warrior. But everybody's supposed to know the basics of what? Self-defense. Somebody jump on you, bite them, scratch them, kick them, whatever you got to do. Basic self-defense. Have you ever been in a scuffle before? Everyone understand this? Let alone you come from an area or city in which you actually have to learn how to fight. You have to learn how to hold your hands, kicking, whatever, elbow, knee, headbutt, whatever defense it is. Everyone understand this? And the same applies to the Islamic sciences. Every single Muslim should have a basic understanding of usulul fiqh. Where do the rulings come from? How do they come from? Every Muslim should have a basic understanding of the sciences of Quran. This was sent down in Mecca. This was sent down in Medina. All right? This was abrogated. So, and every Muslim should have the basics of usul al-hadith. Hadith Sahih, Hadith Hasan, Sahih Muslim, Muwatta Malik, a companion, a successor, every Muslim. And the more that the imams and the scholars push this and promote this and teach this, the better the communities will be. Everybody's not a scholar, and we're not getting everyone to be a scholar. But we're supposed to have the basic ABCs locked down and a bit more. We're supposed to be pumping that in our communities. And the less this is taught and pumped and pushed, and the more, they're naming Muslims, leave them be, they're amma, they're awam, they'll never understand. They're layman Muslims. That's confusing. That class is too confusing. We don't need the classes here. We shouldn't. The normal everyday Muslims, they walk around ignorant. And that's why we have different fights in the masjid and arguments and disputes. Because there's no basic knowledge that's there. And ignorance has the ability to what? Rear its ugly head. No doubt. And it doesn't creep in anymore. Rather, the ignorance is walking around. The ignorance is the foundation here in my household. Because I'm not teaching anything. My masjid, my country, my village. Instead of the ignorance being afraid and scared to come out. The moment I start saying some nonsense or some rubbish, this knowledgeable person is going to put me in check. The moment I try to say this layman cab driver is going to say, no, that's not true. I learned this about my religion. But you're a cab driver. Yes, exactly. But I know the basics of my religion. You can't tell me that. You're not going to tell me that the Prophet said this. And the Quran says kill this, and you can't tell me that. You're not going to hoodwink me. And not only can you not deceive me, but that ignorance is afraid to what? Come out. Everyone understand this concept? The bid'ah, the innovations, and the people who want to practice those cultural innovations, they're scared. Because they know that they're vanguards in the masjid. Someone of knowledge and sunnah is going to put them in their place. No, they're going to shun them. But the less knowledge, less classes, the less awareness that we try to raise of the layman Muslims, the more ripe the breeding ground is for innovations, for sins, and for ignorance. So every Muslim is supposed to know these basic things. So the Prophet ﷺ in these three hadiths, he says wajib, haqqun, and fel. So those are the proofs, and also use the proof of the Caliph. And why would Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu say that to Uthman? That would potentially embarrass Uthman in front of everybody. And why would the caliph stop his khutbah, stop his sermon to censure and condemn him for not making a ghusl if it was only recommended? We're going to understand the usage, how they're using that statement. Why would Umar say something in public if he only left off something which was a what? Doesn't make too much sense, right? Khairan, moving forward. He then says, بينما ذهب فريق من أهل العلم وهم الجمهور إلى أن غسل الجمعة مستحب. And other scholars, most of them, not all of them, most of them, they hold the view is that washing on Friday is not mandatory. It's only recommended. It should be done. It's a good thing to do, but it's not a must. And their proofs and their evidences, whatever view or opinion that you hold, you mention the proofs for it and against it, right? You be fair. You just don't mention the proof for your orientation. You mention the proofs and evidences as well. These other scholars, they hold the view that it's only recommended. واستدلوا بما أخرجه مسلم في صحيحه من حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من توضأ فأحسن الوضوء ثم أتى الجمعة فاستمع وأنصت غفر له ما بينه وبين الجمعة وزيادة 3 أيام. They use the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu in Sahih Muslim as well, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man tawadda'a fa ahsana al-wudu." Whoever makes wudu perfectly, in a good way, a thorough way, ثم أتى الجمعة فاستمع وأنصت. And then he goes to Jumu'ah, فاستمع, he listens to the khatib, وأنصت, he keeps silent, he's attentive, he will be forgiven a whole week and 3 additional days. So the hadith clearly states, من توضأ فأحسن الوضوء ولم يذكر الغسل. This hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever makes wudu perfectly, goes to the mosque, sits down, he listens, he pays attention, etc. And the hadith did not mention whoever washes. And if it was obligatory, they're saying, then the Prophet would have stated that. And the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith is clearly mentioning the virtue of Jumu'ah, of listening without ghusl. So that's their first proof. واستدلوا أيضا بحديث في سنده مقال فقال من توضأ يوم الجمعة فبها ونعمت ومن اغتسل فالغسل أفضل. Another proof that they use is a narration. He says, the author says, في سنده مقال. Its chain of narration is not the most authentic. This is the author's view. That the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man tawadda'a yawm al-jumu'ati." Whoever makes wudu on Jumu'ah, فَبِهَا وَنِعْمَتْ. Then it's a good and great thing that he has done. وَمَنْ اغْتَسَلَ فَالْغُسْلُ أَفْضَلُ. And those who wash, then washing is better. Washing is better. The author here, he doesn't mention it specifically, but we know this is a famous hadith of Samura ibn Jundub radiallahu anhu that can be found in the Sunan and other kutub of hadith as well. And it's a famous hadith. And one of the reasons why the scholars of Islam differ on this hadith being authentic or not is هل سمع الحسن من سمرة أم لم يسمع منه على خلاف بين العلماء علماء الحديث في ذلك 3 أقوال. منهم من أثبت سماعه منه مطلقا ومنهم من نفى سماعه منه مطلقا ومنهم من أثبت السماع الحسن من سمرة في حديث العقيقة خاصة. Scholars, they differ on, is this chain of narration authentic or not? Hasan al-Basri, the great tabi'i, he studied with many companions, and from the companions that they differ on that he studied with or not is this companion. Some say he heard from him, some say he didn't hear him, and some say he only heard the hadith regarding the aqiqah. And this is also showing you why the ulama of hadith يختلفون في الحديث, why there's difference of opinion with regards to sahih or da'if. طيب, moving forward, what's the hadith? The highlighting point from the hadith is the Prophet said that the washing is what? Better. He said that it's better, and just making wudu is acceptable. That's the highlighting point from this hadith. He never said that it's a must, right? واستدلوا أيضا بقول الله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم الآية. He says another proof that they use is the verse from Surah Al-Ma'idah, in which Allah Azza wa Jalla says, O you who believe, when you stand up to pray, wash your faces. The verse of wudu. وَلَمْ يَأْمُرْ فِيهَا بِالْغُسْلِ. And the verse did not say, make a ghusl. واستدلوا كذلك بحديث عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت كان الناس ينتابون يوم الجمعة من منازلهم والعوالي فيأتون في الغبار ويصيبهم الغبار والعرق فيخرج منهم العرق فأتى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنسان منهم وهو عندي فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لو أنكم تطهرتم ليومكم هذا وفي رواية لو اغتسلتم. And he also used another proof, another evidence, and that is the narration of Aisha radiallahu anha in Bukhari and Muslim, is that the people used to work on Jumu'ah. Okay, some of them would work or some of them would travel. They would come from Awali, a region of Medina that was a little far from the masjid. And when they reached the masjid, they would be dusty and they would be a little sweaty. They were sweating, walking, traveling in the sun, etc. And one day, a man from them came to the Prophet and he says, you guys should wash up on this day. Don't come to the masjid smelling. You should come to the masjid clean. If you're working, if you're traveling from far, you shouldn't come to the masjid sweating or in a bad way. So they say this hadith proves this is the reason why the Prophet told them to wash. And not just wash just for the point of washing. So these are two views. And some scholars will say that ghusl of Jumu'ah is mandatory for those who are sweating and working. Alright, this is a brief discussion of their proofs and evidences. You have to pick at the end of the day. There lies no doubt. The view that states that ghusl is mandatory, the proofs are more authentic, and the proofs are far more direct and further from a possibility or maybe. The adillah is right to the point. فَلْيَغْتَسِلْ. Washing, no matter what. Traveling, not traveling, working, wash up. Everyone understand this? Let alone the fiqh of Umar radiallahu anhu clearly proves that. Whereas Umar, he said that munkiran, that was inkar. Alright? And Uthman radiallahu anhu did not debate and argue with Umar. Proving that Umar and Uthman both had the understanding that ghusl was mandatory. So there's difference of opinion among the scholars. If you're not in a rush, there's no reason why you shouldn't wash up for Jumu'ah. That's the bottom line. And alhamdulillah, today we have showers, baths, and all types of technology and steaming, hot water. Many things that were luxuries back in the day. There were luxuries. It was to have hot running water was a what? It was a luxury. Everybody didn't have, hot water. Even before the modern plumbing, that you had to make the fire. You had to cut the wood. You had to prepare the bath. It took a lot. Everyone understand this? Let alone those who are peasants, workers, farmers, let alone in the army. Everyone understand this? People traveling, fighting, days you wouldn't wash. It was unavailable. And it was only the general that could take a hot bath. Being in the wet, cold mud, fighting, wounded. You want to wash up, you want to soak. Everyone didn't have that what? Didn't have that luxury. But our times is a bit different. So if you're not in a rush, make the ghusl. Alright, moving forward. The author here then says, وَمَنْ أَجْنَبَ يَوْمَ الْجُمْعَةِ لَا يُلْزَمُ بِغُسْلَيْنِ غُسْلٍ لِلْجُمْعَةِ وَغُسْلٍ لِلْجَنَابَةِ بل يكفيه ويجزئه غسل واحد على الجنابة وعن الجمعة وهذا قول جماهير العلماء. Now he brings up a new issue, a new mas'ala, and this should show you, as a student of knowledge, any students of knowledge who may be watching, or laymen who want to be studious and want to become students of knowledge who are watching, as we've been explaining how the proofs and evidences are broken down and how the masail fiqhiyya are broken off. The main issue, the most important issue is ma hukmu ghusli yawm al-jum'ah. What's the ruling? Mandatory, sunnah, etc., etc. And then there are subsidiary issues, furu'at fiqhiyya. And one of those subsidiary issues is, what if you're junub on Jumu'ah? Do you have to make one ghusl or two? Alright? Or if you're not junub, if you're muhdith, hadath akbar, such as menstruation. A woman, she comes off of her period, her menstruation on Jumu'ah. And she wants to go to Jumu'ah. This is a very important issue. It's extremely plausible. So her menstruation, her period stopped at 11 a.m. She wants to go to Jumu'ah. I've missed the masjid. I've been menstruating. I want to sit in the dhikr. Do I have to make ghusl for menses and Jumu'ah or just one? Right? Possible or not? Very possible. Or a man was with his wife. A woman was with her husband. They both went to Jumu'ah. They had intercourse in the morning, 10 a.m. They want to get ready to go to Jumu'ah. Do they have to make 2 ghusls or 1? Everybody understand this? So the author here, he says, is that 1 ghusl is enough. 1 ghusl will take the place for both of them. And a person does not have to make 2 ghusls. And this is the view of most of the scholars. Jamahirul ulama, he says. Most of the ulama, 9 out of 10 of them hold the view, is that it's only what? 1 ghusl. Now I'm going to ask you guys a question. So I'm a woman. I stopped menstruating at 10 a.m. I didn't pray Fajr, obviously. I stopped menstruating at 10 a.m. I want to go to Jumu'ah at 12 p.m. I want to get there early. Khutbah's at 1:30. And I hold the view, or I've been taught by your class, that I only have to make 1 ghusl. Which ghusl do I make? Which intention do I make? Do I make my intention for Jumu'ah and menses? Or do I make my intention just the Jumu'ah ghusl? Or do I make my intentions for the Hayd ghusl? It's three options now, 3 scenarios. And the rulings are not the same. One says Jumu'ah. You guys understand the question? Yeah. It's 3 options now. I'm a woman. What am I washing for at 10 a.m.? Am I washing for my menses that it came off? And that's it? Am I washing just to go to Jumu'ah? Or am I washing for both? You say for both. For both. For both. What's the problem if she says I'm washing just for Jumu'ah? No problem? It's a huge problem. All the answers are wrong. It's a huge problem. Huge problem. Showing that basic understanding of not being pure, we're off track. At least, at best, we're off track. How is that? Who can solve the riddle? When a woman was menstruating, could she pray? No. She could not pray. Perfect. She stopped menstruating. She now has to pray after what? Ghusl. So at the time of her menstruation, she's considered to be what? What state is she in? Like what? Like who? Like a junub. We have 2 women here. Listen carefully. This is very important. ABC fiqh is extremely important. 2 women we have. One woman was menstruating. She stopped her menstruation at 10 a.m. Right? So before she stopped menstruating, let's say 9 a.m. she's menstruating. And there's another woman who's not menstruating. And she was intimate with her husband at 8:30 a.m. It's now 9 a.m. Do both of these women need to make a ghusl? Both of them do, for sure. Neither of the 2 can pray, correct? And there are other rulings and things that they cannot do. Divorce, entering the masjid, touching the Quran, etc., etc. Alright? Perfect. So they both have to make a ghusl now. So right now, Sally and Tracy, they're, with regards to being impure, are what? Same or different? They're same. What is the thing that links them both together? No, Sally didn't. She's not married. She was just menstruating. Tracy is junub.
Both women impure. Neither of them can pray. They're both impure.
What type of impurity though? There's a third woman. There's Sally. There's Tracy, and then there's Karima. Karima, she just took a nap after Salat al-Fajr. She prayed at 5:30 a.m. She went to sleep. She was snoring, knocked out. No Shafi'i, Hanbali difference between. She was counting sheep, snoring. She woke back up at 9 a.m. Sally had a menstruation. She's off the menstruation. Tracy was pure, but she slept with her husband. Karima was sleeping.
She had to make wudu.
So Karima has to make what? Wudu. Sally and Tracy have to do what? What is the difference in their impurity? All three of them are what? Impure. None of them can pray. Sally, Tracy, Karima, none of them can what?
Pray.
We agree on this. None of them can pray. None of them can make Jumu'ah. But the only thing that Karima has to do is make what? Wudu. Sally and Tracy have to do what? Ghusl. Why? What's the difference between Sally, Tracy, and Karima?
Because one was just sleep.
What does that fall under?
So the level of impurity.
The level of hadith, of impurity. Sleeping is not like ejaculation. Eating camel's meat, touching your private part, anything that breaks your wudu is not like menstruation. There's different levels of you being impure. If we don't understand that, then we're not going to get the ghusl of Jumu'ah together. Because Tracy is going to make a ghusl for Jumu'ah, and the Jumu'ah ghusl has nothing to do with what? Impurity. The ghusl of Jumu'ah has nothing to do with what? Impurity. It's a spiritual bath that you're taking. That's it. I have wudu, but I'm making ghusl for Jumu'ah. The ghusls are different. So if she's going in there with the intention of making ghusl just for Jumu'ah, technically speaking, she goes to the masjid, she says she's praying, she's still what? What is she?
Impure.
She's still impure. What type of impurity? Major. Hadith akbar. Everybody got it? So Sally or Tracy, they're just making one ghusl. They read this book, they heard this class, they're making one ghusl just for Jumu'ah. Their Jumu'ah, their prayer, their asr, or whatever, however long they didn't wash up again, is kullu, all of it is what? Invalid. And the reason why their prayers are invalid is because they never left the state of impurity. Everyone understand this? They never left that state of impurity, whether it was janaba or menses. They still had major impurity. So once again, if you sleep, deep sleep, you're pure or impure? Impure. You're ritually impure. Your body is clean, but you're spiritually impure. You have to make wudu before you can pray, correct? Perfect. You had a wet dream. You woke up, you had a wet dream. You're pure or impure? You're impure. How to become pure to pray? You have to make a ghusl. What's the difference between sleeping? We both slept. Mike and Tom, both of them slept. Abdullah and Abdurrahman. So? They both slept. Right? One lives in one room and the other brother lives in another room. He woke up, he just slept for 4 hours. And Abdurrahman woke up and he discovered that he had a wet dream. Can either of them pray? It's time for Asr now. Can they pray? No. Abdullah only has to make a what? Wudu. Abdurrahman has to make a what? Why? What's the difference? Because the level of impurity was what? Different. Hadith akbar and hadith asghar. Minor ritual impurity and what? Major ritual impurity. Everybody understand this? Every Muslim has to know this. Every Muslim has to, because all Muslims sleep, all Muslims urinate, all Muslims excrete, all Muslims menstruate, all Muslims, every Muslim is supposed to know this basic stuff. So therefore, when you make the ghusl of Jumu'ah, you have the option of you're either going to make 2 ghusls, 1 ghusl, or 3. Right? Mathalan. In order to just do 1 ghusl, you have to make sure that ghusl is for what? It's either janaba, menses, or both. But you can't just make the ghusl with the intention of just what? Jumu'ah. And that's because Abdullah, he went to sleep. He made wudu for Salat al-Fajr. He stayed up from Fajr up until Jumu'ah. It's now 10 a.m. He's ready to go to the masjid early. And he wants to do what now? He wants to make a ghusl. Because he broke his wudu? He went back to sleep? He was with his wife? No. But he's implementing the hadiths. So technically speaking, before he goes into the shower, he is in a state of what? He's in wudu. He's in a pure state. He's only making the Jumu'ah ghusl for the fact of the Jumu'ah ghusl. So his niyyah of the Jumu'ah ghusl is nothing more than what? Jumu'ah ghusl. That's not the same as Tracy or Sally or Abdurrahman and Flan, in which they have reasons why they have to take a shower. Do you get it? So these are based off of intentions. So if you're going to make 1 ghusl for 2 reasons, you have to make sure that at least you've covered the major reason and allow the minor reason to what? Fall under it. You get it? Everybody understand the difference? Is that I'm out of janaba. I'm clear. I'm done. And inshallah, I've also made my intention for Jumu'ah. And another way of looking at it is, is the Prophet ﷺ said, wash on Friday. So a person may just wash up for janaba on Friday. And I've also, at the same time, I did what? Washed. You come into the masjid for Salat al-Fajr, you want to sit down and read the Quran, but you've heard the hadith, don't sit down until you've prayed 2 rak'ah. So do I have to make 2 rak'ah for Tahiyyatul Masjid, 2 rak'ah for Fajr, Sunnah, or just make 2 for Sunnah and then sit down? 2? No, nope. Because the Prophet never specified a prayer to make. He just said pray before you sit. Pray 2 rak'ah before you sit. I come into the masjid, it's Maghrib time. I made Maghrib. After Maghrib, I can do what? I can sit. How many rak'ahs for Maghrib? So 2 is definitely included in 3. You get it? For sure, 3 is a bigger number than what? 2. So there lies no doubt. I made at least 2 rak'ah before I sat down. I made 3. I made 4. You get it? So there's some things that are specifically done, and there's some things which are umbrellaed. You got it? So therefore, if you're going to make, and of course the safest thing to do is to make 2 showers. Take 2 showers. That's the safest thing to do. I'm showering for janaba, and I'm also showering for Jumu'ah. Everybody got it? But if you want to take that view, the majority of scholars, you make 1 ghusl, and you either want to make all intentions in 1 ghusl, or at least you're going to make the intention of the Hadith Akbar, the major ritual impurity that you have to get out of in order to get back into the pure state. Everyone understand how this works? Everybody got this? Khairin inshallah. All right. He says, وَمَنْ نُقِضَ وُضُؤُهُ بَعْدَ الْغُسْلِ فَلَا يُلْزَمَ بِغُسْلٍ جَدِيدٍ وَلَكِنْ يُجْزِئُهُ الْوُضُوءُ. And there are other issues that he mentions that are very important for Jumu'ah and for your daily showers that you take that we all need to know about. Perhaps we'll mention them in next week's class. We'll stop here tonight, and inshallah we'll take some questions bi'idhnillahi ta'ala from the brothers here if they have any, and questions from online if we have any. We'll make a new live stream bi'idhnillah. One